Anthony Joshua against Oleksandr Usyk is official now for September 25th. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. This is what we were told, and it appears to have followed through this time, and we've got this fight. Initially, good news. This has not been a good year for boxing. I'd say this is probably subpar this year. The last really good year was 2017. Before that, 2013. 2020 obviously was poor. This year, when we expected a nice big revival, let's get some really meaningful fights for all divisions, hasn't happened. But this is a good second prize to Fury AJ. And Oleksandr Usyk is 34. He somewhat recently had an injury with his bicep because he was experimenting with training. He needs his big shot. Those quick feet are only going to be slowing now. And of course, he's going to need them to try and defeat Anthony Joshua. As it stands, will be the biggest fight so far of 2021. Again, a year that hasn't yielded that many big fights. The slight negative I have to put on this is that I am not sure whether we're going to have another lockdown here in the UK. The news, the media, it probably butters us up for the prospect of another lockdown, talking about this variant could be spreading, blah, 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 blah. So I think there really could be another lockdown later this year. And if there is, this being September 25th, of course, it could completely derail. I don't think this kind of fight, with Anthony Joshua being as big as a brand as he is, they're not going to do this fight behind closed doors. If the plug is pulled on the prospect of a 60,000 attendance in Tottenham Hotspur, this fight's going to fall apart. This is not going to be behind closed doors, a fight this big. So that's the risk going forward. Discounting, of course, chances of injuries, someone catching COVID, all of that stuff. If there's a lockdown, of course, the fight's going to fall apart. Assuming it does go ahead, great fight. Really genuinely good fight. Again, I make the point, Usyk needs his chance. He's quite old. And it's just a question of how good of a fight can he give Anthony Joshua? Can he go that extra hurdle? And I suspect surprise most people and beat AJ. Possibly not to those who know their boxing. There's many people who believe that Usyk's style is bad for Joshua. But I think a lot of people feel with AJ's natural size advantages, and he is younger as well, that it's going to be a little bit too tough for Usyk in this fight. You know, something we haven't seen from Usyk is that power, is that certain tenacity and ability to get inside and do damage that, say, Holyfield had. Evander Holyfield was never a big one-punch kind of guy, but he could hurt you. He was able to floor, of course, a Ray Mercer with his very quick left hook, which Lennox Lewis couldn't do. Usyk doesn't seem to have that kind of tenacity, that ability to get stuck in and do damage. He is going to have to rely, I think, on tiring AJ. AJ doesn't have a bad chin. It's hard to imagine Usyk's left hands getting the legs going of Big Anthony. He's going to have to tire him and frustrate him to the point that his energy levels start to melt away in the later rounds. And he becomes easier to manipulate. I can't see him really hurting him. But a really interesting styles clash. Some people probably thought Usyk, I know he didn't look particularly good against Derek Chisora, but we probably overlooked some of just his technical ability. Yes, he didn't really manage to drop him or particularly hurt him. But then a lot of people don't have an easy time with Chisora, and I didn't think that was a close fight. I thought he won easily, so it wasn't actually a bad performance. And a key point, of course, a difference between Chisora and AJ is while AJ is a much better fighter, he gives you space to operate. Chisora doesn't. As basic as he is, as the fact he breathes heavy after 1 and 2 rounds, he puts the fight on you. AJ doesn't. He's more tentative. And I think possibly to his detriment now, since he got stopped by Ruiz, he experiments a little. He likes to box a bit. He likes to take rounds off. That might actually help Usyk to get his own boxing going, to tactically frustrate him, to set a pace that AJ doesn't really like, to find his southpaw jab over AJ, over his left. So it's definitely an interesting fight. And again, it will be the biggest fight of 2021. The event with Canelo and Saunders was a big one. It was great to see that many people back. And if there are 60,000 people in Tottenham Hotspur, that's fantastic. It does seem like things are getting back to normal, but I just can't discount the possibility of another lockdown. Really interesting fight. I'm not sure how I feel about it right now, but it's definitely close enough to give the totally cliched 50-50 remark. Some people said Usyk has bulked up a little bit too much recently. They don't like it. But the proof's in the pudding when you get in the ring. If he can outfeint Joshua, if he can just get him burning that mental battery a little bit too much, then he may really have his way with him. We don't know. How good is Usyk's chin at heavyweight? We don't know that. Has Usyk been floored yet? He got bundled over, didn't he, against that Klovatsky? But I'm not sure Usyk has been floored in the professional ranks. His concentration levels are superb. And if he could take AJ's occasional big uppercut, which is a big ask, then he can, of course, make it a very tough fight. And I think that's what we hope for. But right now what we hope for is that the fight does go ahead, that there isn't another lockdown. And then we will have a very interesting heavyweight fight on our hands. So how do you see it going? Who do you have as the favourite now? I suspect AJ will be a slight favourite because he is the bigger and younger man. And most people don't think Usyk will be able to overcome that deficit. How do you see it going?